Well, this is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Criselda Lewis, standing in for Eben Janssen. Now the show is live and broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Now on the show today, as usual, we cross to the Marikana Commission of Inquiry. We'll chat there to SABC journalist Nozintombi Mia, who is there. We'll also look at Eldorado Park, a township here in South Africa that was cast into the spotlight a year ago after a mother wrote a heartfelt letter to President Jacob Zuma over the drugs problem in her area. Now, as usual, we also take a look at the newspapers from around the globe. But first, the headlines with Anindo Mel.
Good morning, I'm Anine. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. Opposition to Urban Sailing Alliance OTA says it has recommitted itself to helping motorists who are criminally prosecuted by the National Road Agency for not paying their e-toll bills. This comes after the appointment of 2 prosecutors who will work with SANRAL to deal with those not paying for e-tolls. Transport Minister Dipu Peters has in the meantime announced a reprieve for motorists issuing Gauteng's e-tolled roads. The concessions include a further extension of the payment period to avoid the process that would lead to prosecution. The uncle of murder-accused Oscar Pistorius says allegations that the athlete was the aggressor in a recent nightclub incident are untrue and have been designed for maximum attention. Pistorius' uncle Leo has rushed to his nephew's defense after he confirmed yesterday that he was involved in an argument with businessman Jared Mortimer at the VIP room in Sandton over the weekend. Both parties recalled different accounts of what happened on the night. Israel war plans have bombed the home of a senior Hamas leader as the campaign against Gaza militants entered day 9 with no sign of immediate end to hostilities. Yesterday, Israel resumed its punishing air campaign against the Palestinian territory as international efforts towards a ceasefire collapsed. The conflict has cost the lives of 197 people. Meanwhile, international calls for restraint and an end to the fighting in the region has not yielded results. The Ahmed Kathrada Foundation has now called on the South African government to champion the cause of the Palestinians, saying government has a moral obligation to do so. South Africa won the toss and elected to bat in the first of 2 tests against Sri Lanka at the Gale International Stadium on Wednesday. South Africa's new captain Hashim Amla is leading the test team for the first time, having been named in June following Graham Smith's retirement from the game. The home team have a new opening pair, this time with Apul Pakada now playing in his first test since 2007. The latest available score is 111 runs for the loss of 1 wicket. The second and final test will be played in Colombo from the 24th to the 28th of July. Remember, these stories are available on our Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC News. Criselda, back to you.
Well, thank you very much there, Anine, for the day's top stories. Now, the community of Eldorado Park, south of Johannesburg, made headlines last year when a letter from the mother of a 17-year-old drug user caught the attention of President Jacob Zuma. Now, Geraldine James was her name. A plea was for the president to help with the critical and dying state of children using drugs in what she calls the forgotten community. Now, a plea did not fall on deaf ears. In May last year, a task team was set up to fight drug abuse in the area. And since then, much has been done to tackle the serious problem there. Now, to give us an update on how the situation has changed, if at all, we're now joined by the founder of the Sharp Recovery Centre, David Collins, who has worked in the past area for the past year. And also we're joined by Ocean Mokobane, who is with the Ubuntu Addiction Community Trust. Thank you to you both for joining us this morning. Let me start with you, Mr. Collins. Has anything changed in Eldorado Park a year later?
I think so, but there's a lot more still to be done. The communities or the people are getting together and working better together. I can't really comment on all the changes. There's still a lot to go on, but we need to really start by talking and using what's working and distributing it out throughout the communities. There's still a very big problem in the families, supporting the families in the church communities. They really need to be able to handle the situation from more of a diversity perspective and to be skilled on how to handle people with mental illness or substance abuse problems.
President Jacob Zuma was there. The world's media were there to capture it. It was quite a heartfelt story. But what has changed? Just give me some of the examples of any of the changes that might have happened in that community.
Well, we've often with addiction or substance abuse, people go in when there's a crisis. When the problem hits, people jump in and want to put the fire out. And that's not going to create lasting change. What needs to happen is there needs to be development and ongoing, it's an ongoing process. And lots of people from the community have come and received our training at the Ubuntu Addiction Community Trust, which is a trust which is formed to train people in the skills of recovery coaching, which provides a coaching approach to substance abuse and addressing this on a systemic level. So it's not about going off to provide treatment for addicts or drug addicts, it's skilling up.
I want to come to Ocean just very quickly. Ocean, the drugs problem that we're seeing in El Dorado Park, is it an isolated case? I know a lot has been said about, yes, the Cape Flats and El Dorado Park, but is this the picture in many of the communities? Is this what young people are up to?
It is in all communities. Actually, with El Dorado Park, there's a change.
Right.
The community in El Dorado Park is no more in denial. Right. Every family understands addictions because there's education programs that are running there. There are community members who've come for recovery coaching. I am a recovery coach myself. But in Soweto, there's still a lot of denial. We all are watching El Dorado Park, which is doing some work around addictions. And in Soweto, most of the parents are actually concentrating on Nyaupe, in the new drug. But there has been a lot of substance abuse. There are issues around mental illness that most of our communities don't understand. So there's still a lot of work to be done in our communities.
But probably what Sharp is also involved in is trying to diagnose what these problems are in these communities that lead to such a rampant drug abuse. What are those challenges? Let's talk about El Dorado Park because it is a subject matter and you've been there for the past year. I'll come back to you, Mr. Collins.
Okay, so the problem that I find is when people talk about addiction, everyone has an opinion and everyone seems to think that they have an answer. What SHARP does, it stands for Self-Help Addiction Recovery Program. Unless somebody can take responsibility for their own addiction or illness, you're not going to get much progress. And if somebody doesn't want to change, how is that person impacting the community, and how do you get the community or the people or the families or whatever to look after themselves and to understand what is going on, that they can then detach in a way that's going to be respectful. I think going off and beating up addicts and incarcerating them is not a solution that has been working. And it's not just a problem in South Africa. Globally, countries are realizing that.
Yeah, but I want to talk about the lolly lounges. These were some of the major issues in El Dorado Park. Have those lolly lounges closed?
I've no idea. I doubt it.
Why do you say so?
Because I think there's a lot of desperation and people will do what they need to do to survive. And unless we can come up with what we call recovery capital, which are projects within communities that people can go to once they've kind of cleaned up and get into recovery, people are just going to go back to old behaviours.
So, do you think there's enough political will, for example, to deal with this issue? Yes, we saw a lot of intervention, but a year on, you're telling me that the lolly lounges, you doubt they have closed. That seemed to have been one of the critical issues that seemed to have been bugging that community. Ocean?
We seem to be dealing with more symptoms than actually going into the core. We confuse illegal activities with addictions. So we need to get into addictions, let people understand their addictions and every day how to deal with them. And then the illegal activities, then we give those to the police. But if you can look at what we do as a country, we always are dealing with events. We have 68 days of doing this, a month of doing that. If we have a political will, we'll have to do things every day. We have to change the way we've been doing things. We have to change the events that we put out there on a daily basis. We need to be dealing with addictions. And we need to start with schools. We have to go into institutions like churches, that priests and missionary workers should understand that the symptoms, yes, are alcoholism, the symptoms are using drugs,
yes,
lolly lounges, but there is addiction that we need people to understand and know how to deal with that without actually going into criminal activities, which will always be there. In every country there are criminal activities.
That's right.
However, our people do not understand the difference between the symptoms and the actual addictions.
To you both, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Joining us here from the Sharp Recovery Centres, David Collins, as well as Ocean Makobane from the Ubuntu Addiction Community Trust. Thank you very much for your time. Well, let's take a look at other news-making headlines. President Jacob Zuma says the creation of the BRICS New Development Bank is a historic moment. Now, the headquarters of the new financial institution will be in Shanghai, China. Now, Johannesburg will be a host to the Permanent Regional Office for Africa. The bank will have a starting capital of $100 billion and will start its operations in 2016.
There were handshakes and pats on the back. And after a year of negotiating and planning, it was left to heads of state to situate the bank and decide its broad composition.
We have started the journey of forging strategic cooperation relations through embarking jointly on tangible projects with key deliverables that will impact positively on our growth and development. I have no doubt that our continent will also welcome these developments and fully embrace them.
The rotating presidency, chairmanship of the Board of Directors and Board of Governors will go to India, Brazil and Russia respectively, while the regional office in Johannesburg is seen as anything but a loss.
The regional office is going to do a number of things, including the project development facility, including making sure that it drives and leads in the implementation of the infrastructure projects in the region. And I think it would have been prestigious to have their headquarters, but most of the work that we actually need done in the region would be better achieved through a regional office than headquarters.
BRICS countries will enjoy equitable shareholding of the bank, which is seen as critical to the realignment of global development financing.
The South African delegation would not be drawn on the notion that this was a bad deal for the country. On the contrary, in their view, touting the equitable shareholding of the bank and the collective nature of decision-making within the group, suggesting that this could be a new way of doing business within multilateral fora and a hallmark, very likely, of the BRICS group. Shervin Brycebees, SABC News, Fortaleza, Brazil.
Well, certainly Sherwin will bring us a lot more on what's happening at the BRICS summit. Now, the American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa has warned that crime and theft remains the top risk factors for doing business in the country. Now, President of the American Chamber, Jeff Nemeth, was addressing a safety and security summit in Johannesburg. The theme of the summit was A Safer South Africa. Now, Nemeth also warned that crime and corruption was on the increase in the country and warned that safety and security needs to be improved in South Africa. Now, to talk about the summit, we have in the studio late former President Nelson Mandela's Chief of Security and now representing the American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa, Rory Steyn. Mr. Steyn, thank you very much for your time this morning. First of all, we have the birthday of the late President coming up. What are you doing for your 67 minutes?
Well, I haven't even discussed this with them yet, but my family will be mobilized and we'll probably grab a few bags and go around our neighborhood, pick up whatever's lying around and clean the place up a little bit. It's the least we can do. And should there be any other initiatives that kind of cross my path, then I'll consider those too. But we've got to do something, and everybody should be giving at least their 67 minutes. What is 67 minutes?
But certainly a time for you to reflect, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, you spent quite a lot of time with him.
Absolutely. Best 5 years of my life. And, of course, it's the first birthday of our beloved Madiba, that is not with us. So it's poignant.
All right, let's just move on to the summit now. Rory, I want to talk about, it's often said that South Africa is the crime capital of the world. Is this an exaggeration? Is that really what we are?
It is and it isn't. I can tell you, I've just come back from Brazil. I felt far less safe in Rio and in Sao Paulo than I do in Johannesburg. I always tell people I'm Cape Town born and Joburg bred. There's no way I'd live in any other city by choice than in Johannesburg. I think it's a great place to live. But we have our challenges. That's obvious, and there's no denying it. And what Jeff Nemeth was saying in the main yesterday is that crime and corruption, and even if it's just the perception of crime and corruption, because as we saw before our own Football World Cup 4 years ago, that perception actually becomes the reality. We were dealing with some bizarre and crazy stuff in the international media. You'll remember people were marketing bulletproof vests with teams' logos on it and nonsense like that. So those perceptions are indeed barriers to investment, and investment really is what we need. Everybody is struggling in the world today. Our currency is sliding slowly against the rand. I'm not an economist. Oil price is on the increase. That's priced in dollars, so there's inflation. We need foreign direct investment. We need jobs to be created, and crime is a barrier.
How is the summit addressing those issues? Tell us a bit more about what's come out of there and what is the way forward that you found?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, because I would prefer to concentrate on the positives, because there were so many positives coming out of that summit. First of all, we had a great array of speakers. We had 2 former superintendents from the London Metropolitan Police come out and speak. They were excellent. We had a brilliant presentation on cyber crime from one of my former colleagues, Wayne Hendricks, now with the Macquarie Group, because, crime is no longer about a guy walking into the bank with an AK-47. They sit in behind a computer screen. It's an 18-year-old kid stealing your money. We had 2 regional security officers, both from the Pretoria Embassy and from the Johannesburg Consulate. And the most exciting thing for me was that Motorola, being an American technology company, got behind this, and they wished to make this an annual event. And we talked about things like how crime moves from suburb to suburb. We talked about the whole concept of safer cities, and technology very much drives this whole philosophy of making safer cities, and Joburg is there.
So what are those recommendations then that you've made to make, in accordance with your theme, a safer South Africa?
Griselda, there weren't any recommendations coming out of there. There were more, it was an information session. People were given 30 minutes, 20 minutes to present, and then 20 minutes of questions and answers. And I encouraged, as the facilitator, tried to encourage debate about it. And I can tell you that as a security professional and former police officer with more than 30 years, I learned a lot. And I'm sure everybody in the room learned a lot. So speaking to the chief executive of Motorola, Vigela Rankin, after the meeting, we said we need to make this an annual event. And we need to get, our first step, we would love a very senior person from SAPS to come out there. And we want to urgently and sincerely and seriously engage in debate, saying, look, you've got a room full of security professionals. They're the heads of security of most of the US's corporations, multinational corporations that do business in South Africa and Africa. These are our concerns. Let's talk. And I think if we can aim at that for next year, this summit is going to grow from strength to strength, and I'm really excited about it.
But you raised a very valid point about it's not just about going into a bank. I could be sitting here and somebody could be taking money out of my account. White-collar crime, hacking, internet fraud. Was the summit also aimed to address some of those aspects? I mean, in the age of technology, who's to say what might happen?
It was very much addressing those. And again, I'm no expert, but I know because I hear it, I see it with my clients. We're involved in investigations all the time. Money walks out of accounts. We all get the emails and the SMSs, don't we, on the chances. We also had a great presentation from a former general in the SAPS, Bushy Engelbrecht. He was an old South African cop, then a new South African cop. He was involved in the Griffiths and Mxenge investigations, Shobo Shobani massacre. And he talked about the relationship between the police and the private security. And unfortunately, Griselda, there are still certain perceptions amongst our police officers, and I was one of them, that, you shouldn't be talking to private security because they're only worried about money.
Just very quickly, I understand, Rory, that we're running out of time, but what is it that we're getting wrong? We pump so much money into corrections, into policing, into safety, into security? What is it?
Do you know that at the end of the day, it really is always a question of leadership? So if we've got good leaders in the police, good leaders in the private security that sit down around a table and seriously say, listen, this is all of our problem.
Yeah.
How do we address it? Forget about your own agendas and your own fears and concerns. We need to work together on this. That is what we're pushing for, and that's what's required.
Rory Stained, who is with the American Chamber of Commerce and also former late President Nelson Mandela's head of security. Thank you very much for your time. Good luck with your 67 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Well, now let's take a look at what you're saying on social media. Please remember to send your views at SABC Newsroom. We love your pictures, comments, and, of course, opinions. Keep them coming. Well, one here from Leander Perel, who's was speaking on the e-tolls issue, who says defaulters will be prosecuted by senior prosecutors, but murderers by incompetent ones. What a standard, she says there. Of course, a contentious issue here in Johannesburg about the e-tolls. Now, guys, let's just pay the e-tolls, says Nkululeko. He says, I do not agree with their implementation. We are crippling an already crippled economy. He says, guys, let's just pay the e-tolls. Thank you very much for that, Nkululeko. And Pora Manonto says, when is the next march against demonic system called e-tolls? While tweeting there at Zwelinzima Vavi, is Kasatu accepting defeat or else 2016? Shall we speak? Of course, referring there to the elections and perhaps airing their views then. And this one from IG Mstumelo, who says, I don't care about the concession. I did not consent to be told every time I use a major GP freeway, bring on the prosecutors, he says. Quite daring there. And this one from the black man, also on the e-tolls, who says, should a court force me to pay, I will launch a class action lawsuit for our fuel levy / road tax. Government can't have it both ways. Certainly a lot of anger there about the e-tolls and all the progression about the prosecutors who are now going to be looking into getting you to pay for those, or if you're not paying for it, getting some kind of action. But now let's take a look at the front pages of the world. Now, in the US and in the international, New York Times is reporting on the situation in Gaza as international calls for restraint and an end to fighting in the region has not yet yielded results. Taking a look at the Wall Street Journal in Europe, reporting on the story of 21 fatalities and more than 150 train passengers being injured after a train derailed at a Moscow subway station. Well, on to the issue, very hot here in South Africa and certainly around the world. This week, South Africans will remember Tata Nelson Mandela, as it will be the first time Mandela Day will be commemorated on Friday, the 18th of July, without the man himself. Now, to celebrate the great international icon Mandela, let's take a look at the day Mandela revisited the site of his 1962 arrest in Howick in 1993.
For a long holiday for 27 years. And it was a time to stand away from myself and from ourselves and to look at our work. Although it was a tragic experience, but it was also very helpful because we were able quietly to reassess our work, the mistakes that were made, the achievements, and we came out better prepared to carry on our work and to face new challenges.
And of course, we'll always urge you to go out and do your 67 minutes on the 18th of July. Do good for somebody else. Newsroom takes a short break. We'll be back straight after this.
Molweni, nda, dumelang, assalamualaikum, namaste, goeiemorgen, jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to AM News here on SABC News Channel 404. The Basic Education Minister, Angie Motshekga, has dismissed the renewed Limpopo textbook saga as a storm in a teacup.
They have to collect books the previous year. And it's actually the very principals, if that's what they told me was true, they'll be ill-disciplined because they were supposed to have collected books so that state doesn't buy books because we don't buy the same books every year. A book is supposed to last for 3 years. So they are supposed to collect them so they don't run short.
That's AM News, daily at 10 a.m. on SABC News.
The story of Joyce has captured the heart of many and instilled hope to those who had succumbed to the pain of living with cancer.
I am going through breast cancer and of which is stage 4. And the doctor said I left only with 25% to live.
Batho ba tshwereng ke cancer ba se ke ba lapa ba tshwanetse ba tswelele pele.
My employer called me and told me that I mustn't come back anymore because of they found someone who's going to replace me.
Well, welcome back. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Of course, you can tweet us on our page as well at SABC Newsroom. Of course, we'd love to hear from you. But South Africa's top young business talent has been recognised as finalists for the prestigious 3rd Standard Bank Annual Rising Star Awards. Now, the Rising Star programme was established for the purpose of recognising, celebrating and connecting young talented people who have a capacity for achievement and success. Now, this year, a record-breaking 310 entries were received, of which only 5 finalists were selected in each of the 11 business sector categories. Now, to tell us a bit more about the awards, we are joined by the Rising Star co-founder Alistair Swart, as well as Mayendri Govender of Standard Bank, who are also finalists in this year's awards. Thank you very much to you both for joining me this morning. I think let me start with you, Alistair, and why these awards, Rising Star business people, encouraging young people to do great things?
Right. We launched these awards as we felt that the age group of 28 to 40 was sorely under-recognized. There was a lot of graduate awards and there's a lot of awards for guys that have already achieved their accolades. But what about the middle group? What about the guys that are putting in the extra work every day? Where do we recognize them? We also launched this platform to give a national platform that doesn't look at race or gender specific, but more looks at a level playing field where people can, men can compete against women, we don't have the race barrier, and at the end of the day, we can get the top talent of the country throughout business sectors. All right, what we do differently at Rising Star is when we get down to our 5 finalists per category, the network of 55 young talented individuals get put onto an online platform. We work very much with their personal development. And the goal is that in the next 5 years, we'll have a network of 250 South Africa's up-and-coming people who have now been promoted, hopefully, into executive decision-making positions.
That's right.
And will now be networked across sectors. So they'll know their peers and draw on each other's strengths.
I see quite a lot of people there who attended the awards, the who's who. Alistair, why is it important to recognise a business talent in South Africa? Is it about encouraging people to do better? What exactly is it?
Well, it's about putting yourself out there. It's about getting, what are the testimonials I get from a lot of our Rising Stars is I finally have a voice in my organization.
Yeah.
Because of winning the Rising Star Award, I'm being taken seriously. And it's about getting these guys recognized so that they can get taken seriously in corporate South Africa. And for us, like I said, it is about working the back end. It is about developing these guys and using this as a vehicle to drive the economy going forward.
Mayandri, let me bring you in there. You were nominated.
Yes.
What is it that you're doing? Which category, first of all, were you nominated in?
For the banking industry.
For the banking space.
Yes.
What is it that you're doing? You've been nominated. What do you think is different that Standard Bank is doing, to be nominated and for such a prestigious award?
I think from my perspective, to be nominated for such a prestigious award is actually having to work very hard. I think being consistent in your delivery and showing up to be a leader, number one, and one that believing in what you're actually doing. And I think what's important is that is the material that you use and to study hard and actually prove yourself in the organization is actually very, very important.
But Alistair, I'm going to come back to you very quickly. Something just crossed my mind now. Young business people, some that might not have access to opportunity, you're not working for a big banking institution and, might think that starting a business might just remain a pipe dream. Are there any opportunities, perhaps maybe at a later stage of the Rising Star Awards, where you would look at people such as that?
Sorry, just to clarify, you're referring to people starting their own organisations after winning the
Their own
Rising
business,
Star?
yes.
We have had 2 of our finalists from the inaugural Rising Star Awards start their own companies that are still successful today. Right. We also have the entrepreneur category. So every year we do, we feature 5 entrepreneurs, and that will be the top entrepreneurs in the country. We very much work with these guys to get them to the next level. So when it comes to personal coaching, when it comes to their development...
So sustainability is quite a key issue that you participate in to ensure. You said 2 had started their businesses, so sustainability of those businesses, do you get involved in that at all?
We help out where we can. So if the candidate or the finalist comes to me and says, Alistair, I'm struggling, I'm looking for a mentor in X, Y, and Z, we'll then find a solution that's relevant to that challenge that they're facing. That is where we're at the moment. We are busy looking at getting partners on board, such as Action Coach, to work on the entrepreneurs, helping them to work their business strategies. And then obviously this network stays alive by adding 50 individuals to the network each year. So once you're identified as a rising star, you're part of that network. The learning resources will always be available to you. We have access to over 650 e-learning courses that as long as the member is active on the learning seat, the seat will be paid for by us.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
As long as you're using the resources, we'll make them available to you.
Sounds great. Meandri, what do you think programs like this do for business talent in South Africa? Certainly a boost?
Definitely a boost. I mean, to be part of such a prestigious award alone is, a huge honor. And all this can do is actually boost your career in your current company or not in any other opportunities in the future.
But encouragement for other business like-minded people. What is it? You mentioned hard work. That's how you got to this point.
Yeah.
But dedication, of course,
yes,
has to come with this to be nominated for such a prestigious award. Advice to other young people sitting and watching, thinking, I want to be like Meandri.
I think not giving up. I think most importantly is you're going to have lots of obstacles in your way, lots of issues that you experience, but I think have a vision of where you want to go and work hard towards it. And I mean, every single step and every single mistake is a learning process. Learn from it and move forward. I think that's what's important, is that lots of people have started and they realize that they don't always get their way and they give up very easily. I think do not give up. Work hard, you dedicate yourself, you have a vision of where you want to go, and every single step that you do what makes you get to your goal at the end of the day.
Now we see why she was nominated. Thank you very much for your time there, lady and gentlemen. Co-founder of the Rising Star Awards, Alistair Swart, as well as Meandri, Governor of Standard Bank, who has been nominated. Thank you very much to you both for your time. Now, let's take a look at what you're saying on social media. Please remember to send all your views to @SABC Newsroom. Back onto one of the biggest cases here in South Africa, on the Oscar Pistorius case. Now, would Oscar Pistorius really start a brawl in a club now? Doubtful. Please, should you just let him be for now? After all, he may go to prison. Those are the comments of Sia Meaty. Thank you very much for that, Sia. And also from Basil the Bulldog, who says, I wouldn't want to fight Oscar. He has had about 10 fights without defeat. #Oscar Pistorius. Also, again, on Oscar Pistorius, Louis Skeepers, thank you very much for your tweet. He says, I think Oscar Pistorius isn't that clever. One there as well from Ki Naledi, who says, also on Oscar Pistorius case, yawn. Money scheme at its best. Thank you very much for your tweet on that. Another one on Oscar Pistorius, Monica Saresa, who says, what a great choice of club to keep a low profile. #Oscar Pistorius as well. Thank you very much for all of that as well. Now let's take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page as well. Well, today you will see there is the radio DJ accused of killing his girlfriend. He's expected to appear in the Protea Magistrates Court in Soweto again today. You can also read more on Advocate Darlene Pofu saying that former Police Minister Nathi Mthethwa together and others should be criminally charged for their roles in the lineman strike that led to the death of 44 people at Marikana in 2012. And also another hot issue on the Communications Minister, Faith Mutambi, who has defended her decision to approve the appointment of the SABC Chief Operations Officer, Claudio Butweneng. You can find all those stories and more on our Newsroom Facebook page. Of course, thank you very much for all of those, and you can keep them coming. We certainly look forward to hearing from all of you now. Well, we're going to take a very short break here on Newsroom. We'll be back with you straight after this.
Accra is a beautiful city of contradictions.
Funerals in Ghana are colorful and flamboyant. Ghana coffins are functional coffins made by specialized carpenters. These colorful objects, which have developed out of figurative palanquins, are not only coffins but considered real works of art. Each year, festivals and durbars are held in various parts of the country to celebrate the heritage of the people.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Have we seen the last of you in politics?
I don't know. No, I am just okay now with the work that I'm doing. Let me just do one thing at a time. So I don't have any plans for politics.
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News channel.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's have a look at the news-making headlines today. The opposition to Urban Tolling Alliance, OTA, says it has recommitted itself to helping motorists who are criminally prosecuted by the National Roads Agency for not paying their e-toll bills. This comes after the appointment of 2 prosecutors who will work with Sunroll to deal with those not paying for e-tolls. Transport Minister Dippy Peters has in the meantime announced a reprieve for motorists using Gauteng's e-toll roads. The concessions include a further extension of the payment period to avoid the process that would lead to prosecution. The uncle of murder-accused Oscar Pistorius says allegations that the athlete was the aggressor at a recent nightclub incident are untrue and have been designed for maximum attention. Pistorius' uncle Leo has rushed to his nephew's defense after he confirmed yesterday that he was involved in an argument with businessman Jared Mortimer at the VIP room in Sandton over the weekend. Both parties recall different accounts of what happened on the night. Israeli weapons have bombed the home of a senior Hamas leader as a campaign against Gaza militants entered day 9 of no sign of an immediate end to hostilities. Yesterday, Israel resumed its punishing air campaign against the Palestinian territory as international efforts towards a ceasefire collapsed. The conflict has caused the lives of 197 people. Meanwhile, international calls for restraint and an end to the fighting in the region has not yielded results. The Ahmed Kathrada Foundation has now called on the South African government to champion the cause of the Palestinians, saying government has a moral obligation to do so. South Africa won the toss and elected to bat in the first of 2 tests against Sri Lanka earlier today. South Africa's new test captain Hashim Amla is leading the test team for the first time, having been named in June following Graham Smith's retirement from the game. The home team have a new opening pair this time, with Apul Karanga playing his first test since 2007. Remember, these stories are available on our Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC News. Griselda, back to you.
Thank you very much, Anine, for all the latest news making headlines today. And now, the public hearings set up to probe the Luandle evictions in Strand have adjourned until next week in the Cape Town CBD. Now, this is the City of Cape Town and the Western Cape Human Settlements Department have declined to make oral submissions. Now, the inquiry was set up by Human Settlements Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, the chairperson of the ministerial inquiry probing the recent Luandli evictions in Strand. Advocate Denzel Potgieter joins us from Cape Town this morning to give us a bit more on what is taking place there. Advocate Potgieter, thank you very much for your time this morning. A very good morning to you.
Thank you, Griselda. Good morning to you and to the viewers.
Now, Advocate Potgieter, I think let's talk about what the latest is on these public hearings. Are we still on track?
Yes, we have gone through the first phase of the activities and the work of the inquiry, Griselda. We have elicited and obtained written submissions from all of the interested and affected parties and the role players. And we have now moved into the next phase, and that's a phase of public hearings, which had commenced on Monday and continued yesterday. So we're very much still on track.
Yeah. So why have the City of Cape Town and the Human Settlements Western Cape Division reluctant to do verbal submissions? Apparently there's an issue relating to that. We have approached them as part of the people and parties and entities who can make a contribution to the mandate of the inquiry. They have both provided us with written submissions. The City of Cape Town has provided us with a fairly detailed written submission. And we have invited them to participate in the public hearings yesterday. I was presented with a letter from the city that was addressed to the Minister, Sisulu, and a letter from the Provincial Western Cape Minister of Human Settlements, Madikitsela, addressed to myself, indicating, amongst other things, that there are apparently some outstanding legal issues concerning the establishment of the inquiry. But Advocate Potgieter, I just want to go to one particular issue. There seems to be quite a lot of political mudslinging relating to the Luandli issue. We saw that where nobody wants to take responsibility. We understand that land is privately owned by Sandrel, but certainly you see a lot of political mudslinging, and actually the people of Luandli seem to be left out in all of this.
Well, that is the unfortunate part of it, Griselda, because this is a humanitarian emergency. It's an issue that is above political and politicking. And I must emphasize that is the way in which we, the members of the inquiry, approach our mandate. So it's really a matter that shouldn't be the subject matter of politicking. We have, in fact, made it quite clear that insofar as we are concerned, we are mandated to ascertain the circumstances surrounding the evictions, the occupation of the land, but importantly, to formulate recommendations for the benefit of Minister Sisulu and by that same token the government, to at least avoid a similar situation from developing where, in fact, in this instance, it's not private land. I mean, it's land that belongs to Sanrol, which is a state-owned company. It's an organ of state, so it's not private land. And it is that factor that makes it so unusual that from a publicly owned land, people are evicted under very, very adverse circumstances and then left destitute. And clearly, that can't be acceptable, yes.
All right. I want to get your response, Advocate Potgieter, to the Premier, Helen Zille, saying that, she questioned the motive of this hearing, saying that people have been evicted everywhere else around the country, but why does there need to be an inquiry in the Western Cape regarding the Luandli evictions? What's your response to that?
Well, as I've already alluded to, this is an unusual situation. It's not a situation where you have evictions from private property, which take place quite frequently. What happened in this case is that effectively the evictions were from state land. So it is land owned by Sanral, which is a state-owned company. It's an organ of state, so it's state land. And that is why it is an unusual situation. It is unusual in the sense that one doesn't normally expect where the state is the landowner, even through its state-owned companies, that people would or should be evicted under the circumstances that had occurred in Luandle. So it is an unusual situation. I'm not aware of a recent similar situation, and of course that is partly why it's justified to look into this matter.
Advocate, just walk us through how this process will unfold from leading up to the findings and the recommendations. What happens next?
Yes, we are in the phase of public hearings, so we have invited and we are still inviting the various role players to public hearings. Once we have taken all of the submissions and we have interacted with those parties at the public hearings, we will retire as a committee, and we will then consider all of the facts that have been presented to us. We will then prepare a report, and importantly, that report will, apart from making factual findings around the incident, will contain recommendations aimed at hopefully preventing a similar situation from developing in future.
Advocate Denzel Potgieter, who is with the Ministerial Inquiry, or the chairperson of the Ministerial Inquiry, set up there to probe the Luandle evictions. Thank you very much for your time there from Cape Town.
Thank you.
Now moving on to the Marikana Commission of Inquiry, former Police Minister Nathi Mthethwa says the killing of 34 miners at the hands of police in Marikana in the northwest should not have happened in a democratic South Africa. Now, testifying at the Farlam Commission of Inquiry into the massacre, the minister said he took full responsibility for the action of the police. Mthethwa defended the police's actions on the fateful day in August 2012. He told the Commission that government has repeatedly apologized for the deaths which happened during strike-related violence. Now, Mthethwa says remorse has to be shown for the lives lost. Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza, representing the widows of some of the miners killed, described police action as a massacre. Advocate Dali Mpofu, on behalf of injured miners, argued that Mthethwa's role at the time resulted in the death and injuries. Mpofu added that the minister and others should be charged with murder. The inquiry resumes tomorrow. Now, for all the latest on what transpired at the Commission, we are joined from our Pretoria studios by SABC reporter Nozintombi Mia. Nozintombi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Good to see you in Pretoria there. Well done on the Marikana Commission. Got some good work that you're doing there. Nozintombi.
Good morning, Criselda. Thank you so much for having me in studio.
Let's talk a bit about the cross-examination. Looked more like an interrogation of the former police minister yesterday. Tell us more.
Well, there certainly was some sort of a power balance going on between Advocate Dali Mpofu and the former police minister Nathi Mthethwa. On several occasions, Judge Ian Farland had to step in and sort of calm them down like young children on a playground. There did seem to be a lot of posturing between the two, and there was a moment where over an hour we spent just between the two of them bickering backwards and forward. It was not really the most positive reflection back on the former police minister, neither was it a glowing recommendation either on Advocate Dali Mpofu. But once that posturing was removed and we got on with the work at hand, we did see some very interesting concessions that came out, particularly from Nathi Mthethwa. The biggest concession of his being that he apologized on behalf of the Ministry of Police, on behalf of government, to the families of the 34 miners that were shot and killed. And that really is probably the biggest issue that came out of yesterday's commissions.
Will he continue this morning testifying, Nozintombi?
Well, there's no proceedings that's happening today. We do know that proceedings will resume tomorrow, which is going to be on Thursday. But what we're anticipating is the continuation of the cross-examination of Mr. X. And you will remember that Mr. X has been considered one of the police's star witnesses He has given us some very interesting moments at the commission. Key most of those was when he asked for a break in the proceedings on the one Friday, citing that he was being bewitched and he could not continue with the proceedings up until he could go and see his sangoma. So we certainly are expecting to see more fireworks from Mr. X. Before we broke yesterday, Advocate Darlene Mpofu made a written submission that Mr. X come physically into the commission halls. You will remember that Mr. X is currently at a secret location, and for his safety and his security, it does seem quite difficult that he should actually come into the auditorium there at the commission proceedings.
Now, Nositombi, Dumisa Nsebeza had referred to all of this as a massacre. What was the former police minister's response to all of that?
Well, the former police minister was very reluctant to pin himself down to the use of the word massacre. But an extremely impassioned Dumisa Nsebeza spoke about the Sharpeville massacres. He spoke about the last biggest mining strike where police shot at striking miners. And he referred to those events in history, in the South African history, as massacres. And he said what happened on August 2012 was also a massacre. Minister Natim Tetwa did slightly agree with Dumisa Nsebeza, but he was not buying the concept that that particular killing was a massacre. What he instead said was that killings should not have happened.
Well, Nozintombi Mia, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much for that update there on the latest from the Marikana Commission of Inquiry, of course, all the action that took place yesterday. Thank you very much coming to us there from our Pretoria studios. Well, Newsroom is broadcast every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. from our studios here in Johannesburg, South Africa. The show repeats at 1400 hours in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also live on YouTube at the time with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Now, this is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you again tomorrow. Yeben is still on leave. Bye-bye for now.